You get all the phlegm.
Yeah, all the phlegm. Okay, this is the NAG Online Podcast, episode 1, recorded on the 20th of July, 2014. I'm Wesley Fick.
I'm Rick de Klerk.
And I'm Mark Dell. How's it, everyone?
Okay, we are all writers for the online website NAG Online, which you can access at nag.co.za. We also have forums that you can visit, nag.co.za/forums, and we've got a bunch of Facebook groups, and we've got a Twitter account, and somewhere we have a Vimeo distribution for the magazine, which people can go and buy the magazine there and read it all over the world. More specifically, I do the tech side. I'm the writer of all the tech articles on the website. What do you guys do?
Rick?
Yeah, sorry, I can jump in here. I largely just write news articles. I try and keep an eye on some of the competitive events that are going on, obviously like EVO, Dota 2 and the like. Opinion pieces and reviews when I get them. So, all-purpose man.
Yeah, you put out a lot.
The 100 Rand man.
You put out a lot less inflammatory stuff than Chris Kemp does.
Against Chris.
I don't know if you remember that.
After my
Ubisoft
Valentine's article, I couldn't really. There was nowhere else to go. I couldn't go anywhere further. I reached my peak.
Oh boy.
And Elena?
I do mostly indie stuff. I try to focus on freeware independent games. I try to focus a lot on mods and retro stuff, but usually I do indies.
And I think you've written for the magazine before, haven't you?
Yes, I actually appear in the physical mag.
What was your last thing that you did in the July issue?
I did a piece on Endless Racer. It was actually by a local games company, Cape of Good Games, for the Android platform.
Cool. Well, at least you're actually getting regularly published, mostly in the magazines. That's fun.
Nice boy.
Okay. So every week or so, well, maybe not every week, maybe just every 2 weeks or 3 weeks or a month, we have a little competition on the website, and we encourage people to comment on the articles and then to just put in something witty, something shiny, maybe make a rhyme or a song, and you'll be able to win something. And for this week, we're giving away 4 movies because we love you, or rather because Dane loves you, Lord Dane.
How can we not love them? I mean,
yeah.
You know.
How can you not love him? Everyone wants to rub his feet.
Well, look, here's the thing. The films are fantastic. Pompeii, Anchorman, a personal favorite.
Yeah. The 4 movies we'll be giving away is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mutagen Mayhem. This is not the one that is done by, what's that guy's name? Michael Bay. This is not the Bay-fied Turtles. There are no explosions in this one. And then there is SpongeBob SquarePants Deep Sea Games. I've never seen that before. There's Pompeii. I've never seen that either. And Anchorman 2: The Legend Continues, which I can't remember if I've seen that. I've seen the first one. The first one was magnificent.
Exactly. Anchorman 2 just carries it on, I think. It does a relatively good job, so it's definitely worth picking up.
Oh wait, Pompeii. It looks like this. Pompeii looks like it's been styled off the type of destruction that we saw in the 2012 movie. Everything's just going to shit everywhere. It's just okay.
That's a disaster movie. Some very, very ancient proportions.
I actually have to admit that I hate disaster movies.
Well, okay, it's a romance disaster movie.
Yes, so
something for everyone.
Yeah, especially Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Spoiler: everyone dies in Pompeii. I'm just putting that out there.
Spoiler! If there's a dog that appears on the screen, it will probably die. That is
anyway,
always what happens.
Ashes to ashes, you know the story.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, so we've got that competition up and running.
And as for when we'll actually announce the winners, we have no idea. No one actually announces the winners. We just sort of hope that the people in the magazine at the offices remember and that they have enough coffee. Maybe. Yeah.
Coffee.
Okay.
So
Moving on. Chris Kemp published a column, 5 features every game needs to have. This was put up last week on the 16th, which I believe, what day was that? That was on a Wednesday. And basically just runs through some of the things that he thinks games should have. One of them is an emphasis on gameplay and not graphics. Another is all games should have multiplayer, and the final one, no.
Well, there's actually 5.
Yes.
Dedicated servers and modding, save anywhere, and jumping or non-lazy invisible curtains. What do you guys think?
I mostly agree with him, except for the multiplayer parts, which I suspect he anticipates that would be the most controversial entry. I honestly don't believe that a game necessarily has to have multiplayer. That is not to say I dislike multiplayer. I mean, depending on the game type, but at the end of the day, I end up playing the game more than what I do other players, if that makes sense.
Most of my childhood it actually has actually been spent playing offline. So the whole multiplayer aspect was pretty new to me, even when I got a computer and an internet connection.
There's a lot of LAN games I play. I've got a little circle of friends, and we have an absolute blast with it. But single player is something very personal. It's like reading a book or something that you really enjoy. It's your own personal experience.
Yeah, I mean, look, the way Chris and I'm obviously open to debate here, but the way Chris presents it is almost a case of the multiplayer can be put into any game if done correctly.
Yeah.
I often find that sometimes the multiplayer is introduced as a way of at least building up on weak elements of the game. So often you'll hear the statement made of, well, the game's great in co-op. And that's just as a result of anything. I mean, you could make that argument for anything, really. It's always going to be better with friends.
But that is something that we're not addressing here. Is there are 2 facets to multiplayer: cooperative and competitive. I mean, those are different fields on their own completely.
What was it? It was, I think, Army of Two was supposed to have a cooperative multiplayer where you would play in groups against other people, but then you would be teamed up with another person, and if that other person got shot down, you'd be able to revive them. The aim of the game was to have all these individual teams working together to fulfill the mission. And instead of having everyone just running around in a free-for-all like Titanfall, you've actually got some strategy going on.
It's very nice. I mean, games like Titanfall, Unreal Tournament, it can be an absolute blast just to get your friends together and shoot the crap out of them. But in my experience, that gets older a lot quicker.
I mean, there's a certain amount of work that also has to be dedicated to the multiplayer aspect of any game, right? So you often find that it's different teams that are working on both components. If the multiplayer is released and it's sort of weak, then obviously it dies generally a month or 2 after the game's been released, and then that's a dead scene. So it's something that I think every developer has to weigh up. So no, like you say,
all those years ago, they had separate developers for the multiplayer and single-player components.
Yes.
You would have this massive disconnect between the way in which both of them ran. I hope that's not going to be the case with Battlefield Hardline, because the story is supposed to be done by the story and the multiplayer is supposed to be done by Visceral. No, Visceral's doing. No, it is Visceral who's doing Hardline, and the story and the multiplayer is supposed to be done by them. But some people are thinking maybe the multiplayer is done by DICE instead, so it'll be.
It's dicey. I Pun intended.
And then as you go down the list, dedicated servers and modding. Obviously, this has been a huge contributor to the success of Fallout and of games like DayZ and Skyrim, particularly Skyrim.
Not long ago, I even posted a Doom mod that was available that they're still working on. It's an open world survival thing. I mean, for a 20-year-old game, the reason that people are still paying attention to it is because of the modding scene.
Yeah, you can still modify all those old games. You can still take all the assets from Morrowind apparently and plug them into the Skyrim engine, and things will mostly work. That's what they're doing with Skywind.
Yeah, they're trying to basically a retroactive pack.
It just makes financial sense to essentially allow for modding, because it just prolongs the life of your game essentially, and it allows for the sort of long tail of sales that has your title possibly still selling 3-4 years from now. There's just really not a reason why you shouldn't include both dedicated servers and allow the community to just manage it themselves, and modding. So
even more so if you're actually going to sell your engine like Epic does with the Unreal. I mean,
you can mod all those.
You know, you're basically just throwing all the tools out them and saying, "Guys, have fun." You know, we'll just stand back, and then they've actually got a portfolio that they can show to potential buyers of the engine.
A personal theory that I've had is, what if all the Bethesda games released to date are buggy because they allow for modding? What if they just say, okay, here's the game, this is sort of like a product that you'd find in early access, we're giving it to you, here, tinker with it, and go away now. Just go away.
Well, I don't know. I think that's obviously something that a lot of guys like. That's a joke, right? Which is that Bethesda releases it and then the modders they complete the development. But I think it's just with their games. Typically, they have so many sort of interaction points that basically just doing the quality control, quality assessment, essentially from a debugging and from the testers, from the testers' perspective. I think that stuff is just going to leak out, and when you eventually present it to the kind of audience that does pick up the Bethesda games and sort of just open it up to that number of gamers, they are going to find all the weak points. Yeah, the fact of the matter is, then the modders can go in and they can fix it, which is not always if you have something like Dark Souls 2, for example, where it had that really poor resolution and the like, and then the modder came along and basically fixed it in
Durante.
There we go, Durante. We got amongst mods. Yeah, exactly. So
but you must also bear something in mind. Hiring out a development team. Hiring out a testing team for the beta version of your game costs a lot of money, and you can only make it so big. Whereas if you release something early access or potentially unfinished, you've got hundreds of thousands of testers globally working on it.
Yeah, and they pay money to test the game.
I know. It's actually ingenious.
Yeah,
it is.
I mean,
indeed it is.
That's definitely something that we can chat about. I think the sort of these Kickstarter and early access titles. I think that there's been a number of stories recently, at least, that. But maybe we can get to that a bit later on in the podcast.
And then just before we jump away from the article, one thing that I do have a bone of contention with is save anywhere. I don't think the majority of young gamers want this type of thing. Because they'll be like, no, Mom, let me play. I'll get to the next save point. No. Next save point, now. It's 15 minutes away. Leave me alone.
The folks don't have to know. Right? So it's okay. You just say, look, I need to get to the next save point. Where's the save? Well, there's no save point on the screen at the moment. I'll try and locate it. Don't worry. Give me 5.
This doesn't help if your mother plays PlayStation as well, so I can vouch for this.
Core demographic.
I don't know. I'm sort of mixed about it. I've played so many games where they put checkpoints in crappy places, and you have to do the whole level again just to get to that one checkpoint. In which case, you often die very quickly again, and it's just endlessly frustrating. On the opposite side, I can understand the way it's going to just suck all the joy out of the game to have it save anyway. I mean, anybody who's ever played an emulator knows that they've got save states, and that sort of ruins the challenge.
Well, it depends on
Ubisoft.
how the game. Depends how the game is designed around it, right? Like if you take something like Prince of Persia, for example, the one that sort of used that cell shaded style and kind of had just the.
Yes,
it was basically just called Prince of Persia. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean that removed the save state, like death entirely. So you would fall off a ledge, and your partner, Elika, thank you. She would just pick you up and put you back on the ledge, and everybody was complaining. But if you think about what that game was about, which is essentially sort of navigating these platforms and finding the best way of going about it. It actually worked. It works. It works within the design of the game because you don't really.
Bioshock?
Do it 10 times in a row, and he will eventually say, "Run, jump, die, repeat. Run, jump, die, repeat. Run, jump, die, repeat."
But that's exactly what happens in Bioshock Infinite. I mean, you get shot. Elizabeth just revives you again, a few steps from where you died, and you carry on. What did that do to the game?
Well, I mean, this is the thing, right? So it depends on how you consider, like, how the save system ties into the game play, essentially, and whether that gameplay is it essentially needs those sort of breaks for those long sections, essentially interspersed. So I don't know. I'd prefer to be able to save anywhere, but I'm pressed for time nowadays, and I appreciate a game that. Sorry, I appreciate a game that respects my time and allows me to pick up where I'm left off.
You are at the target market age for Flappy Bird.
You think so?
Because you just hop in and play and then carry on. Or even Pokemon. That's why it's so incredibly popular, is because in Japan, you just have no time to do anything, and while you're busy commuting, you just bubble yourself away from the other people, and then you just play Pokemon just to while away the hours.
I will say one thing though. We definitely had a lot more patience as kids than what we do as adults. Because I've played some of the old NES games I loved as a kid, and I think to myself, how the hell did I play this without?
Some of those games didn't even have win conditions. You couldn't even finish some of them.
Well, look, that's fine. If a game doesn't have a win condition, that's not too hard. I mean, but if you ever play something like Battletoads or Ninja Gaiden, I'm like, damn, man. I can visualize this executive there giggling gleefully about how much he's going to stress out these poor little kids trying to beat this game and get to the end of the level.
Okay. Moving along. Delano posted a review. When was that? That was on Friday. Posted a review of Orcattack Flatulent Rebellion. Lots of thoughts are going around here.
Yep, lots of thoughts, lots of belching. You know, I really wanted to like it. I mean, I'll never deny that I have a juvenile sense of humor, and I can appreciate something like that. But it just wasn't that much fun. I mean, it felt like a beta release. The enemies don't respond. The combat gets so boring and repetitive, and I don't know. It just doesn't be as gross as what it could possibly be. Maybe we're too desensitized from watching South Park all these years. But this is how I felt.
Who killed Kenny?
So I mean, just fill me in basically as somebody who's not that familiar with these games. In particular, this title. What is the gist of it? Is it tower defense? Is it
It's hack and slash. You control an orc, you go around beating the crap out of humans, lots and lots of humans, and your special abilities are farting and burping. The appeal behind this is that you can get a second player in, and it becomes quite spectacular. I mean, all the burping and farting going on, setting things on fire with your flatulence. It's funny, but it gets old very quickly. It's basically a button masher.
Okay.
Mm.
I mean, how long did it take you to get through the game as a matter of interest? Was it like a relatively long, does it drag on a bit? Does it overwear its welcome?
It overwears its welcome very quickly because there's very little variety. I played it for about 2 hours and already it felt like this is way more time than I should have invested in it. It was more fun when I got a second person in. That definitely increases it, but yeah, it just delays inevitable.
Okay.
And I see that part of the review goes into the technical flaws that you ran into the game, where you have frame drops and just bad frame delivery and
crashes,
lag and
the enemy AI. I mean, sometimes you just be beating the crap out of humans and they won't even respond. It's like dummy mode, basically.
So thumbs up then is what you're what you say. No, all right. So not one to avoid.
You can do worse than get it, but definitely not at the top of anyone's list.
Certainly. All right.
For anyone who wants to read it, they can go onto the NAG Online website under Games Featured Articles, and you can read it. If you want to know the score, spoiler alert, it's a 60. Oh, damn it! I closed the tab. No, bring it back. Before, if I'd been using Internet Explorer 7 or 8 or whenever, I would never be able to get that tab back.
Mm-hmm.
The marvels of modern technology. In any case, also on Friday, I put up a laptop buyer's guide. This is the first time I've done it for about a year now. I stopped doing it when there was a bit of a lack of interest, and I was also moving to My Gaming to write for them. And basically what I've done is I've gone through the entry-level segment, July, for 2,000 Rand to 9,000 Rand. If you've got any sort of budget in between there, you can go through the guide and you can pick and choose whether you want a tablet or whether you'd like a laptop in a specific size. That's from 11 inches all the way to 17. And there's a surprising amount of options and hardware configurations that you can work with. And more specifically for this time, I was looking at gaming capability. Just having the minimum amount of hardware required just to play, like say Team Fortress 2 or Left 4 Dead or whatever. And you can get by with a surprisingly small amount of a surprisingly weak set of hardware these days. It's gotten to that stage. The only thing that I've disliked as I've been watching the market go over the years is that Intel has ruled it more so now than ever before. Ever since they started going out with the what was it? The original Core Solo. That was the first of the Core families. It was a mobile chip, and that started the race. What's called the race to idle, where they design their chips to be as fast as possible, using as little power as possible to get back to idle mode, just to almost go back to sleep, to benefit battery power and to benefit heat and that sort of thing. So at the moment now, if you're an AMD fan, or God forbid, if you absolutely love VIA processors, you won't find anything. You'll just find Intel. That sucks.
Yeah.
I was going to make a salty comment about PowerPC, but we'll just move on.
PowerPC. Nothing's happening there at all. Yeah. More surprisingly, I think for anyone who wants to buy a tablet, all of the options that I've listed there in the table, they're all capable of running most games out there. Everything.
It depends. In terms of 3D games, I've noticed that like the Unreal Tournament 2004 engine games work very well on this hardware spec, even at maximum settings. And there's still quite a few good picks out there, like Killing Floor.
Yeah, definitely. I've been playing a lot of Killing Floor, and I love it, but it doesn't run very well on my netbook.
Even on those settings.
Even on low settings, 800 by 600, low. Everything's turned off. Everything's dumbed down. I've done what I can in a console, but it just.
Yeah.
Man. Some hardware just won't get you anywhere. Would any of you consider laptops?
I've been actually. Well, I mean, as a gaming replacement, probably not. I wouldn't mind picking up something reasonably powered, just so I could play sort of the mid-tier, low-tier sort of games, stuff that doesn't require necessarily the sort of processing power of like a Watch Dogs or the like. But I would likely continue just working for gaming at least. I'd keep on relying on my desktop PC, and the laptop would be very much work-oriented, with hopefully the potential to just occasionally dig into the sort of occasional game here and there. I certainly wouldn't be looking for sort of I wouldn't be looking for like multi-hour gaming experiences on the laptop.
More casual.
More casual, yeah, certainly. I think if I was going to get to that level, I imagine I'd be exiting the 2,000 to 9,000 Rand range fairly quickly if I wanted something powerful enough to run it. I assume that's correct, Wesley?
Yeah.
Would I be right in my assumption?
That would be correct. In fact, it's actually funny. The price ranges that you have to buy in to get a certain amount of performance has never changed. If you want to buy a gaming laptop, you've always got to spend more than 11,000 Rand to get something that's decent.
And they typically sit where? So often in like if you actually get the one that, if you get a laptop that actually does have that performance boost, you're probably sitting in the region of 15 to 20,000, right?
Yeah. If you want something that can actually replace a desktop, that would be the case.
Exactly. From a cost perspective, it just, to me at least, makes more financial sense for like the hard gaming. You just stick with your desktop PC because you can kind of get a reasonably powered machine for, like you say, that sort of also within the 9 to 10 grand region quite easily.
But there's also replaceability. I mean, if the laptop's motherboard blows, you're pretty much stuffed.
Yeah. There's a lot of pros to having your own desktop, but I imagine, like you say, it's for guys that are mobile and are on the move constantly. So,
and when you really don't have that much, when you really don't have that much power, you just go for a laptop.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a market for it. So I imagine that there's some gamers that can't necessarily shell out the kind of money that would get you a 10,000 or 11,000 Rand sort of machine. So I definitely think there's a place for it, and it's good to have that sort of breakdown. Because the low end typically doesn't get that sort of love in terms of analysis. You normally find that on the higher end machines, and then sort of at the lower end, it's anybody's game. So I think it's a good article to have around.
Yeah, I see in my Steam chat just now, one of our listeners, Juranki, he mentions that Steam streaming capability is making low-end laptops viable in the home setting. When you have a nice expensive desktop, you put it away somewhere in your room or your office, and then when you just want to play games, you just open up your laptop, you go into Steam, and you just use your desktop to do all the heavy lifting.
Certainly. I think it augments I agree. I think it augments your existing game setup. Doesn't necessarily, but if you're looking to replace it, it's sort of a different story. But yeah, certainly you can obviously use it from a streaming perspective. That is a good point to make. And as that aspect of Steam becomes more robust as time goes on, it'll definitely be a more viable option for pretty much anyone.
But what about professional players, people that play Dota 2, in tournaments, people that play StarCraft 2? Isn't a gaming laptop more viable for what they do?
Really, the fact is that games like that are mostly CPU limited. They're not very GPU limited, so you can choose something with a very low-end GPU. But you've got to prioritize on getting a Core i5 or a Core i7 chip, one that goes to high clock speeds, and that's mostly.
But I mean, if you're playing it competitively, in all likelihood, you're looking for the best performance that you can get.
Yeah, and you're going to put everything on low settings anyway to get the most frames.
So yeah, I think it's a good article. So sort of moving on then.
Moving on. Xbox Entertainment Studios is dead. Xbox Originals 2. This is part of the cull that Microsoft has now. They're cutting 18,000 jobs over the next 12 months. This is just to slim down the workforce after they bought out Nokia. And the new CEO, Satya Nadella, he wrote this huge sort of mail to all the employees in Microsoft discussing the future of the company, what was going on, where they were going to go. And one of the things is that they were focusing on Xbox as what he calls a strategic importance. It's a strong consumer brand, a creative center for gaming, and a leader in bold innovation. These are his words, not mine. And if you go a little bit down the list, it's down the quote. It says, as part of the planned reduction to our overall workforce announced today, we plan to streamline a handful of portfolio and engineering development efforts across Xbox. One such plan, we expect to close Xbox Entertainment Studios, and they're going to close Xbox Originals, which was going to be in charge of the Halo Nightfall series. That little web series that they were going to publish straight to Xbox Live subscribers.
Yeah.
I wonder how this is going to affect their developer relations, because if you have the same people doing if you have the same people doing Xbox Originals as you are doing as they're working for the ID at Xbox program, then you've got a whole bunch of people who suddenly now have to leave, and some of the projects they were working on in their spare time will now just fall by the wayside.
Certainly, but I mean, it does talk to. I mean, I don't know. I think this is sort of in line with Microsoft's strategy. Well, it's at least it's not widely spoken, at least, but it does seem like they're trying to the Xbox family, so to speak, within Microsoft has. I think he had a number of these sort of hits over the past couple of months. This is obviously just the latest in that. And there's been serious talk about obviously just the Xbox as a brand and a viable part of Microsoft, whether or not it wouldn't be better just from the shareholders' perspective, selling it off.
Yeah.
So essentially removing it, not necessarily disbanding it entirely, but having Microsoft sell it on to interested parties.
I just have to make a correction. It wasn't. Sorry. It wasn't Satya who said those words. It was Phil Spencer.
Yes.
Yeah, it was Phil.
So it's an interesting one. I mean, 18,000 people in a market that's seen a number of sort of studios close.
Don't forget, a number of them are going to be from the marketing department in the EU. Yeah,
exactly. And I mean, that adjoins the likes of, say, Crytek, who's also sort of UK, I think it was the UK operations, have also come under quite a bit of scrutiny since a lot of the employees have claimed that they're not being paid and the like. Obviously, not to conflate the two, just it is a it's a tough time in the game industry, and this is just one of the latest stories in that sort of saga.
I looked at this in the view that what they're trying to do is they're trying to downsize to become smaller, to be more agile and mobile, and to move on to new and different trends quicker than they have in the past. Like, for instance, you wouldn't have seen old Microsoft drop Kinect as quickly as it has now, and they've dropped Kinect and advertising about Kinect almost completely in all of their marketing materials.
Yeah. So I mean, definitely, I agree with you. And to a certain degree, that's also it's something that they've pushed really hard from a developer's perspective, and then obviously. Sorry. So the point that I was trying to get at is the fact that agility helps Microsoft quite a bit. What does it do for the for third-party developers and the like who are sort of sold on certain aspects of Xbox, like the Kinect, gear up to sort of support that aspect because Microsoft is doing the song and dance saying that they're going to be supporting it, and then, like you say, very quickly, as it becomes necessary from their perspective, drops it. I'm not saying that it's the wrong move. It's entirely the right. In that particular instance, it was perfectly the right move to make. But I imagine that it left a lot of guys out to dry.
Delano, what do you think?
I'll be honest with you. I'm completely a PC player and a mobile player, so the state of Xbox doesn't have that much relevance to me.
PC Master Race.
I'm never happy about any sort of game studio going under or downsizing or anything like that. So my main concern is basically the indie part of the Xbox Live market. What's going to happen with that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's the state it's going to be.
And it's pretty sad when any studio has to close down and or fire of people to downsize.
Microsoft just seems to be very aggressive about getting rid of products that are not that popular. I mean, just going off the track slightly, something like Windows 8, they're already talking about retiring it because it didn't get the publicity that they wanted it to. And I think that they're doing the same thing with the Kinect and maybe the whole Xbox brand eventually.
Yeah, when they're moving into the same direction that Apple went into, where they have your Windows 9 license tied to your Live account.
Yes.
Yeah. Interesting. Anyway, that's that. Moving on to the next article. Court-obtained emails suggest that Bobby Kotick was nearly fired. And I was the first to comment on this article with "damn it." Damn it. That shot fired so far away from him. It's just, yeah. And before the podcast started up, we were just talking about this, and although he's a great businessman, he's made Activision the multi-billion-dollar company that it is now. But that one line that he said back in, I think it was 2010, that developers shouldn't have any fun making games, that he was going to take all the fun out of making games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So do you feel like he's succeeded? Do you feel like he's drained the amusement from games, the zest for life?
Well, here's the thing. Activision is sitting on a huge number of intellectual properties that they can use. They're sitting on Crash Bandicoot, which they haven't used since 2011. They've sort of split the development for Call of Duty now onto a third company. What is it? Insomniac, I think, is who's doing Advanced Warfare.
Advanced Warfare. Sure, I'm not sure.
I cannot remember who's doing it.
I'll tell you what, Google's friend. So I'm just going to reveal my. There we go. What I meant to say was Sledgehammer Games.
Of course.
Of course. We're journalists here. We know this stuff. It's not like...
Sledgehammer, yes. Sledgehammer.
Entirely. Yeah.
We can't possibly remember the name of every developer.
But we try.
What do you guys think though about? I mean, I've never really liked Kotick. Seeing him on screen and seeing interviews with him, but maybe he's a completely different person inside Activision. Maybe he's a better person inside Activision.
I don't know. I often feel that I don't know. I think Bobby Kotick is a very astute businessman, and I suspect that he knows what gamers actually want, despite us sort of bleating to the contrary, which is why the kind of, like you say, the sort of rampant abuse of something like the Call of Duty franchise, with now a third developer, with obviously I imagine the idea of just keeping that sort of yearly schedule going, is pretty good from a business perspective, because clearly people keep on buying it. So I suspect that for Activision Blizzard, it has resulted in some poor ideas. So I mean, obviously you've got like the Diablo 3 auction house as an example, with its always online requirement.
Yeah.
So I mean, there have been missteps, but certainly not on the level of, say, EA, for example, with the likes of SimCity or Battlefield, or they tend to have a slightly slicker implementation of these ideas. So it doesn't surprise me that he created people up. He might have rubbed certain people within Activision up the wrong way. And
Steve
Vivian, obviously, but he obviously knows what he's up to. So to a certain degree, I'm actually glad that he's here, because
he keeps it going.
He does keep it going, sometimes for the worse, but I think you need people like that within games, just due to the sort of the reach and the size of it, basically. So
maybe we need corporate types to counterbalance creativity.
Yeah, there have been a number of people who've actually gone and they've compared him to what's his name, the ex-CEO of Nintendo. His surname was Yamoki. It's not so. It might be Satoru.
What was the comparison, though?
The comparison is basically they're both bean counters. They're both businessmen, but they know what the public is going to buy and what they're going to be interested in, and they'll know flat out straight away if there's a plan.
Aren't you thinking of Howard Lincoln?
No, not Howard Lincoln. But basically, they know straight away what's going to work, what's not going to sell, that sort of thing. So maybe we do need bean counters. Oh well. In any case, the next story is a bit of a switch from that. BioWare is asking, actually the Mass Effect guys are asking the public what they would like to see in the next Mass Effect game. You can take a questionnaire and spend 5 minutes just answering it, and perhaps some of the things that you would like to see changed in the game will damn, that keyboard is loud. Maybe some of the things some of the things that we're seeing, some of the things that you'd like to see changed, like for instance the story, exploration, combat, customization, when it comes to the Mass Effect story. And you just answer the questionnaire, and hopefully they'll take your opinions into consideration and put them into the next game.
Yeah, not a hell of a lot to say about that, really. Just if you feel like this kind of feedback is read and it is taken under wing, then by all means fill it in. Otherwise, let's see what comes out.
It's almost as if they're jealous of the fact that all the early access guys can use all of that feedback and make the game better as it goes along. Whereas what they have to do is just show it to the publishers, and then they'll say, "Yeah, no, go back. That looks ugly. No, change that color. It's too orange."
Getting the audience's perception right from the go.
I mean, it does seem like they could. I mean, probably just based on feedback provided by the game, right? Because you often have, especially when it is connected in some way, shape, or form, you sort of have that feedback to the from players to the developers that the game is essentially tracking via the likes of Steam and the like. So it seems like they'd be able to get a lot more information that way, just than through a survey, essentially. But why not? I mean, BioWare has sort of expressed their desire to sort of meet people's expectations for the games. Yeah, I mean, with like Dragon Quest Inquisition, they've been doing a lot of marketing and the like, just obviously talking about some of the characters that they're introducing. There was that story about the they used the term the first real gay character or something along those lines. Which was unfortunately misinterpreted, and then obviously there was a huge hoo-ah about it. But the impression that I'm getting, at least by these character reveals, is they're sort of going out of their way to express sort of what they're doing differently with the games and sort of the market that they're trying to reach, these sort of different markets, essentially, often underrepresented and the like. So maybe the survey forms part of that.
I remember all the NeoGAF threads that came out about Dragon Age 2 about how much everyone hated the characters.
It is. I don't know. I mean, let's see what comes from the survey. I mean, it's there, and you guys can fill it out. So that's really all we can say about it at this point.
Yeah, fill it up, please. Do your part. We don't want any more $10 side missions that you have to pay for inside the game while you're playing it.
That's true. I completely forgot about that.
I haven't even gotten to that stage in the game, but I've just seen so many YouTube reaction videos to it. It's a shame.
Please do not attach color codes to endings. Thanks. Signed the internet. Make Dragon
Age Inquisition. No. Make Mass Effect, the next Mass Effect game, more friendly for people who play with their mouse in the left hand.
Okay. Is that a particular?
It costs developers nothing to just go and put out a key set. Instead of WASD, you use IJKL, and you just remap the keys for people who play with their left hands, because it takes you hours to do it. Hours and hours and hours.
Are you a lefty?
I am a lefty, but I choose to use my mouse in the right hand because it just drives me insane when you have to look at all the list of keys and you figure out, okay, do I use that in the game? No, I don't use that in the game. Let me remap that somewhere else.
I was just wondering how that actually works, because I know a few lefty friends who play first-person shooters, and I'm like, how do they do it?
BioShock and BioShock 2, they were actually revered at the time for having options for people who were colorblind, and you could play the game entirely in colorblind mode. That was pretty cool.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Moving right along, Chris Roberts has promised people more interesting things in Star Citizen. He says that now if you give him $50 million, that's just another $2 million extra, that he'll be able to add in alien languages to Star Citizen. Basically, what he's going to do is he's going to hire language. What is the actual word here?
Linguists.
They will actually hire linguists to help them create new languages for the different races in the game. The different races are Vandul, the Xian, and the Banu.
Well, yeah. I mean, Star Citizen is its own. It deserves its own topic by itself. Just with the fact that there isn't really a game at this point, and they have kind of hit this 50 million mark. Well, they haven't hit it yet, but the fact that they're sort of in those boundaries is just I think a topic worthy of discussion by itself. It's cool that. Yeah, sorry, please go.
My brother Matthew says that they are called xenolinguists. Xenolinguists. These are people who are paid to create fake languages.
Yep.
Alien
like
languages.
Mark Walkran that Klingon.
Yeah.
I mean, is xenolinguist sort of the term for any sort of fake language, or is it
alien languages, particularly because you have xenomorph, so xenolinguists. Yeah.
But we often call them conlangs as well. Constructed languages.
Conlangs sort of fall. It wouldn't just be purely. I mean, conlangs would be. Those often address interesting points and the like. I mean, it's not necessarily alien languages specifically.
It can be anything like Esperanto's conlang and Klingon's a conlang. Even Tolkien's languages, Quenya and Sindarin, all of them are conlangs.
Yeah. Well, look. I mean, what's an extra 2 million for adding this kind of
They are working with 1/4 of the budget of Modern Warfare 2 right now. So that's scary.
I mean, the fact of the matter is, like, they've been releasing new ships, which they often have. They release these sort of advertisement trailers for, which presents the vehicles often. I mean, those trailers are really fantastic, but I mean, this Star Citizen has sort of accrued cash over time, and I mean, right now I believe that the dogfighting module has been released, so it is possible to get into the. Yeah, you can obviously get into the cockpit and start shoot. I don't believe it's multiplayer at this point, though. It's still only sort of single player. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah. There is a multiplayer beta that's going to be coming out pretty soon, but they're still working on it to make sure that it doesn't break anything.
Yeah. So I mean, this is just one element of the sort of the saga that is Star Citizen. I'm really keen to see what happens when it gets released. And there seems to be a number of people that are invested in the idea, so hopefully this adds to their experience.
Yeah.
And it's very ambitious. Appeals to all of us.
And also there's the fact that so many games out there now play as if you've got a babelfish stuck in your ear. Everyone speaks English. So it would be pretty cool to run to someone who speaks a completely different language, and you just have to read the subtitles underneath the screen, or you find some way to try and translate it.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Are these languages going to be learnable? That's the thing.
That would be interesting. That would be cool. I hope that it will, because then you'll have little kids, instead of growing up learning Klingon, they will grow up learning a dead language from a game.
I can visualize archaeologists 20,000 years from now finding these language fragments and just scratching their head trying to figure out where the hell did this come from.
It'll be like the Rosetta Stone. I'm sorry, you can't understand this language if you haven't installed Windows 7 and Star Citizen.
There we go.
Where's Windows 7? Hey, do you have a floppy disk? No, it's on a CD. What's a CD? Give me that. Sad. Moving right along. Let's see. Former Panamanian dictator sued over Call of Duty depiction. Now this is Manuel Noriega. He is the former military dictator of Panama. He ruled from 1983 to 1989, and he's taking Activision to court over his depiction of Call of Duty Black Ops 2, where they just make him the bad guy.
Yeah. I mean, I found the story. I mean, I commented on the story in particular. I just found it's a really interesting situation, right? Where games have kind of reached this level of
Public relevance.
Public relevance as well as exactly public reach, that the likes of a dictator can find his likeness. Exactly. Find his likeness in this game, and I think actually have a legitimate claim. I'm not entirely sure how it pans out.
It would be something tantamount to libel, really.
Well, I mean, this is the thing, right? Which is often games have sort of skirted around the issue by sort of representing them within game, but not necessarily going as far as to depict the actual person. So it's very clear to the watcher who it is that you're parodying or emulating, but there's nothing distinct there that's directly ties it to its real world person. So in this case, I mean, that direct link is there.
If anyone's ever seen the World War II era videos that came out, they were done by the companies in America like MGM and Disney, and they were very, very at the time serving America's interests, where they would make Hitler always a bad guy. You would always have Stalin
the Axis forces.
Yeah, and it's sort of like as if as if Modern Warfare 2 just went over the line a bit, just to actually take a person who was in the real world and put him into the game as an NPC and as part of the storyline.
You see,
no,
sorry, continue.
And make him the bad guy. It's like Kim Jong-il suing. Who was it? I can't remember who published it, but suing Trey Parker and Matt Stone for his depiction in Team America, calling that I think, what was it at the time? He called it an attack on the dignity of His Royal Highness Kim Jong-il and of the people of South Korea, and sort of like terrorism somehow. I don't know.
It was funny. Oh,
it is. What's interesting?
They didn't quite see it that way.
I mean, what's interesting about this particular case is that if you think about something like Advanced Warfare, for example, right, where I believe Kevin Spacey has been cast as one of the sort of main characters, at least within that storyline. There's no doubt that Activision have paid for that that opportunity to use his likeness, right? They are selling the game on his depiction within the game. So in that, I mean, you compare that to obviously in this case here with Manuel Noriega.
He's not getting any money for it.
He's not getting any money, but it also asks the question of when exactly is it? When is it correct? But when are you able to use these kinds of likenesses to add sort of real aspects to the game, right?
Well, hold on a sec. He's a public figure, is he not?
Certainly, but so is Kevin Spacey. You could argue.
So, personally, I think it's just a case of dictators being very reluctant to criticism. I mean, they clamp down on any cartoonists or anybody who's critical of them while they're in power. This is just trying to extend that power in the post-Reign world.
Yeah.
I personally think it's fair game.
Well, he's not an American, so he can't.
Yeah.
He can't really do much about it.
Yeah. I mean, in the story itself, it references Lindsay Lohan's sort of attempt to release her sort of the issue with Rockstar on what she considers a depiction of herself, loosely disguised within the game.
Which is really reaching.
Which is reaching, yeah, exactly.
Really reaching, because the girl that she thinks looks like her isn't anorexic.
Well, but I mean, you see, yeah, sure. But I mean, that's the question, right? Which is, could you then, would somebody like Activision be able to closely, so somebody like, once again, like with Kevin Spacey in Advanced Warfare, why go as far as to get that official name and sort of likeness attached? Why not just create somebody that very closely looks like Kevin Spacey? You see, where do you start drawing the lines? So it's very easy to say, well, we're not going to pay Manuel Norija because he's a dictator and a questionable human being as far as history goes. But we're happy enough to pay an American actor. I think it's an interesting one, and I think we're going to be sort of seeing more of these stories as they come up.
Games are continuously delving into the field of morality and ethically acceptable, and as they become a more accepted medium, it's going to become deeper and deeper.
Yeah, my brother Matthew just pointed out that the valid reason for having Kevin Spacey in Advanced Warfare is because he's got star power, and because his character in Modern Warfare in Advanced Warfare is very similar to his character in House of Cards. So playing on that.
That's exactly it. But my point is that if you could get away with his likeness being in the game, to the point where anybody watching it is under no misunderstanding that it isn't Kevin Spacey, but it's just renamed like John Smith. But it's clearly Kevin Spacey in terms of his depiction, in terms of his actions, in terms of the way he's presented in the game. Why can you not just go in that sort of direction? Once again, like you say, probably in America, there's a slightly different legal landscape at play, and if you can argue to the point where the likeness is being used, maybe you have a valid claim. It's a really interesting question.
I also think that there is a tiny grain of truth to the idea that what this also is Activision being used as a propaganda machine. Because, for instance, when you had the film studios, MGM and Disney, doing wartime movies, and they would represent the enemies of America as bad all the time. I know my mom, she used to watch, back in the 70s and 80s, there were period pieces warning against Chinese insurrectionists and Chinese rebels and terrorists, and she grew up to be scared of, or not scared, but just very, very uncomfortable around Chinese men. So, yeah. And
well, if you look at who's the enemies in all these games, same thing applies. Middle Eastern, North Korea, consistently protagonists.
Yeah. And Rick,
antagonists, you mean?
Antagonists. Apologies.
Do you then mean to imply that what it should be is that people their personalities change to become intellectual property? If you can understand.
I certainly, I mean, like I say, that's why for me it's such an interesting topic, right? Because to a certain degree, in this sort of modern era of worldwide communication, sort of the globalization, where your likeness can be, like, if you're interacting on these social platforms and the like, I think that your personality and your identity is IP to a certain degree. I think that it is something that you've got to manage. And in this case, I think in this case, it's very clear like how the argument would go, because you could argue that Manuel Norija is an individual of historical interest, very much like, as you say, Hitler. And he has been the subject of a number of games. So I think that you could argue that his inclusion here is acceptable. I don't know if necessarily the implementation within Black Ops 2 was the right way to go about it, though. Because it's essentially attributing dialogue, actions, real-world representations within the game to Manuel Norwegia, right?
Yeah,
But hold on a sec. Doesn't this go back to the same old argument about drawing the lines between what is real and what is supposed to be fiction within a game setting?
Well, I mean, certainly. But if you are going to straddle that line of real world, sort of real world events and real world personalities, I think it becomes a little bit trickier. I'm not saying that you shouldn't tackle those issues. I just think that it's a question of at what point can you freely choose to represent somebody within a game, and when is it something that would have to be addressed from the point of view of licensing and the like, and that seems to be something that's at this point not entirely decided.
So if you had to choose a local example, a little app that requires you to move around Julius Malema dressed inside an overalls outfit and sort of manage him just like a Tamagotchi, and you have to make him do things. Would he be liable for any of the money or any of the proceeds to go to that? Because it's just like an artist's it'll be just like an artist's impression of Julius Malema.
Once again, like you start entering the area of satire, and satire is protected under in terms of our constitution at least, it's protected. But I don't see the Call of Duty Black Ops 2 as being satirical. It's not really presented as such, and I think that's where the sort of ambiguity of the situation lies, right? Which is, you're not presenting it in a way that's making a political, at least in my opinion, you're not necessarily making a overt political statement that's being sort of positioned in the frame of humor. It is, like you say, very much in line with those, like you say, sort of the Chinese propaganda films that you were talking about earlier. And I think that's where, like I say, that ambiguity lies. But I think it's a topic that's definitely. There's a lot of ways of going about it. I agree with you 100%. I do not think that Julius Malema, in your example, would be at least
able to get some funds
would be allowed. Exactly. He would not be need any of those proceeds. You should not be able to receive any of those proceeds necessarily.
My brother just reminded me that there is something called Zoomagotchi.
Yeah. That is true.
There is something called Zoomagotchi.
Yes. Yes, and I mean, obviously taking care of your own little president, essentially. But once again, it's very, very tightly. I mean, that's very firmly seated in the realm of satire as well. If it was something along the lines of a first-person shooter, for example, and you had Julius Malema in like Americana, for example. Now you start treading a slightly more more serious topic. Exactly, and it's not necessarily positioned in the realm of this is a humorous comment on. And that's not to say that these games shouldn't address this, because as games have evolved, they've taken on more serious topics, right? Like Spec Ops: The Line.
Yes.
So it's not. Exactly. So it's not to say that they shouldn't address them. It's just when you start talking about this merging of real-world personalities within the realm of your game, I think that's where things become a little bit tricky.
But I've got a question. Would this dictator have objected so badly if the game had portrayed him in a positive light?
I think in this particular instance it's exactly like you say, which is it is a man reaching for relevance in a world that has largely moved on. And And yeah, certainly why not? If your likeness is in a game that you know is a multi-million-dollar franchise, why would you not, if you had the opportunity of getting some of the proceeds, attempt for it? And I think in his case, he's got a much stronger argument than Lindsay Lohan. So
to sum up, there's got to be a line and under which an artist can creatively use the likeness of a person or the personality of someone in order to advance their story. There has to be some line.
I think, that's likely for the courts that would be for the courts to decide, right? Because they're the ones that I certainly wouldn't expect any artists to restrict themselves from representing certain topics. That is not that's not what I would want at all. But they are going to be tested in the legal realm. And the strength of the medium and the strength of it is going to be, hopefully, will be revealed there essentially. So I would have liked to really see this story in particular make it to that point. But it's unlikely to happen, like you say, because the plaintiff isn't necessarily an American. So
yeah.
If anything, it just drummed up more interest in the game.
Well, exactly. So there we go.
Bad publicity is actually the Streisand effect.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, sorry for hopping on the topic, but I was really fascinated by it.
Because at what point in time do you start consider period pieces as creative under Creative Commons licenses? That sort of thing.
Yeah.
Moving on. Now we just get to a section of the podcast called Topical Topics, and this is where we just find anything on the internet that has piqued our interest, and we'll put it together and bring it in here just for a sort of close-out argument / debate type of thing. And this is all going on to basically two things where Gamasutra's reporting on pay for play, which is when YouTubers are paid by publications, are paid by publishers and game developers to positively represent their games in the right kind of light, and Kickstarters which are failing because people aren't holding their promises. Yeah. So what do you guys think about the pay to play thing, YouTuber style? I remember at the beginning of the Battlefield launch, Battlefield 4, you had a number of people who were allowed by DICE to release videos and gameplay, and like for instance, they were held to certain restrictions. They couldn't show PS4 gameplay along with Xbox One gameplay. They could only have PS4 and PC, or Xbox 360 or the Xbox One and PC. They couldn't talk about multiplayer. They couldn't talk about bugs. Nothing of the sort. They were just there to help the sales drive for Battlefield 4.
Well, isn't it in the realm of promoters rather than self-prescribed reviewers?
Yeah, because they have no one to actually answer to, so they can do whatever they want.
And as we established previously, there is no such thing as bad publicity. If we talk about a game, even if you mention its faults, its lack of features, people still hold an interest in it.
Yeah, you'll have people who will be complaining about the server problems in Battlefield 4, and then someone will come and ask like, "Hey guys, what you talking about?" "Oh, we're talking about Battlefield 4." "Oh, cool. I wanted to play that game. Was it fun?" "Yeah, it's okay. But, server problems." Ping lag,
The thing is, YouTubers have been a topic of debate now for the past 2 or 3 weeks, really. And I think it was prompted at least by there was a article about PewDiePie and his annual income, which was
$2 million.
Well, it's actually,
$100,000 a month.
Yeah, it basically, I mean, what it actually, it's $4 million US annually from his YouTube channel. He makes roughly about $10,000 a day. So that sort of sparked this whole sort of, at least for me at least, it sparked this whole sort of investigation into what YouTubers doing. I mean, Mike Rose basically called them YouTubers, and that's the Gamasutra article that you're referring to. He wrote a story earlier, which was, "Is YouTube killing the traditional gaming press?" And that's sort of where he started calling them YouTubers, and now the term has been at least picked up by a lot of the guys. It's a tricky one. I know that you guys were saying now, you referenced the Battlefield 4 story. And I know that there was also a huge thing with Machinima and basically about promoting the Xbox One as a console. And these guys being at least part and parcel of this agreement, and obviously getting compensation for it, but not necessarily specifying within the videos themselves that this is what they were doing. So it's an interesting thing.
If you put up enough videos with certain tags in them, and you were part of the Machinima group, they would actually pay you above the $1 per hit that you would get. For that, you would actually be paid an extra $3 from the Machinima brand to do Xbox One coverage.
So I mean, YouTubers and Let's Players and such are. I mean, we've discussed this earlier, but it's a sort of a new medium for games coverage, essentially, and that's
for everything, really.
Well, for everything, yes, but I mean, in games in particular, sort of benefit from that format, right? Because you can kind of represent gameplay, you can demonstrate the graphics, you can demonstrate the mechanics of how stuff plays off against each other, with your own sort of personal opinion. It depends on the kind of person that's playing it, but and as a new medium, I think they're going through the same sort of teething issues that the gaming press themselves went through maybe 20, 30 years ago, when it was sort of handled largely by enthusiasts, and they were trying to work out how they can make this into a viable business, but also
mainstream appeal,
an ethical one. Yeah. So it's an interesting topic. I mean, I don't know how you guys feel about YouTubers per se, or what they're actually doing with these sort of profit sharing sort of plans. Is it just a case of transparency, that it should be upfront that that's what they're doing?
More upfront than what they are now, and I think they've actually been incredibly lucky. If you still had the demo model, where you would put out your game and then you'd have a playable demo released a month before the game for people to correctly just analyze it and look at it and play it, then you wouldn't have this kind of opportunity for them where they can do Let's Plays or Twitch streams. And that's what people look for. They look for the Twitch streams and the Let's Plays so that they can see if they want to play this game or not. We're giving them a massive amount of power just by giving them so many subscribers and so many hits and views. And I mean, everyone has their price at some point, so that's a problem.
Well, I know people besides PewDiePie. There's also the Angry Video Game Nerd. There's also Lazy Game. I mean, these guys, their sole job is just YouTube videos. They quit their daytime jobs.
Certainly, and the question, obviously, that I think a lot of the mainstream gaming press is asking, right, is we haven't really questioned. I think that's why I think that this sort of coverage is so valuable, because although we've sort of looked at these success stories of the likes of PewDiePie or an Angry Joe or a Total Biscuit, we haven't necessarily asked about the why it's so successful for them, or at least for these certain individuals, right? How is it that where's this money coming from? We've always just assumed that it's just the YouTube ads, right? Or at least I think a lot of people have kind of assumed that it's the YouTube ads. But that's clearly not the case. There's all sorts of sort of agreements going on, sometimes openly, and I think that's obviously fantastic. And then sometimes in the background, which is less useful for the viewers that have come to trust these YouTubers. They're going there for their opinions, they're going there for their take on the game, and they're going there with the expectation of a little bit of expectation of honesty from the viewer, from the YouTuber himself or herself. So it's questionable. I definitely think it has to be more transparent, and I think that there also has to be, in addition to that transparency, they've got to be a little bit more selective about the kind of deals they're willing to make. I don't know if you feel the same.
I definitely do, because if you get to someone who's effectively been paid for their opinion, when you watch the video, you can't really take it at face value anymore.
I mean, that's the thing, right? Which is, I mean, I wrote about this on NAG, one of my opinion pieces, which was sort of video game journalism, the new order. And YouTubers are at least being seen as a more legitimate channel for gaming coverage, because there's this perceived notion, at least amongst gamers, that the gaming press is corrupt, right? That we're in cahoots with the publishers and the developers.
You mean we're not? Oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
Sorry, what's that?
No, I was saying, you mean we're not?
Oh, yeah, well, look, I can say this because I haven't received my check from Activision this month, so I can go off. But as soon as they catch up on the payments, then I've got to tone myself back.
I'm
censored.
still waiting for my Core i7 from Intel, but no, nothing yet.
Yeah, but I mean, coming back to the point though, they are seen as a alternative to the mainstream press, and I think it's fantastic. I honestly think that this is a medium that I'm very keen to see as it develops. I think it's a valuable one. I think they've just got to be careful about what they're willing to agree to. It's not always a case of just, if we're open about it, it's fine. I think that you've got to have a certain line that you're willing to draw, where you say, look, although this agreement might be open, ethically, it's not within the best interest of my viewers. So, I mean, Total Biscuit, for example, he's come under a bit of pressure from Mike Rose, at least, who called him out about some of the agreements that he was willing to make with publishers and the like. Total Biscuit he has a slightly different take on it, but I think that's why I think that kind of critical analysis is necessary. I don't know if you guys have anything to add though, from the YouTube perspective.
No, I share your views completely.
I'm in complete agreement.
I've never had anyone approach me, like for instance, I lie. When I was writing the review for the Gamdius Zeus, the Zeus mouse, I was in constant communication with the people from Taiwan, because they had been distributing the brand in South Africa for a while, but they weren't getting the kind of market reach that they wanted. And so occasionally the lady that I was in contact with would ask me, what's the market like here? Who are the people who are buying it? And I'm totally unqualified for this, so I just told her flat out, I didn't know. And they were looking for a specific type of review which would show it in a good light. So I've seen that firsthand before. Not that it's a bad thing from their side, because it didn't actually affect what I put out later. But it is definitely a problem.
Was that?
Mark, haven't you ever had any game developers or publishers come back to you after they've read a review of one of their games, and just asked you,
ask yourself to explain yourself or the like?
I've never had that. I've had a couple of requests that I've put out, and they've come back to me saying, yes, here's a key but they'll give me a warning like it's supposed to be difficult or whatever, which is not really telling me to go easy on it, but they just put that out there as a warning. That's the closest I've ever gotten.
So sort of reviewer guidelines almost, which is typically what I think a lot of the AAA titles are. The guys that receive those review codes often receive and then completely ignore, because you're kind of there to give the game its fair shake, right? Which is, I think though in those cases it's more about making sure that you calling attention to all the facets of the game, more so than sort of implying. I think though, to be fair, we have sort of the traditional sort of gaming press is more resilient to this kind of activity, but not completely, right?
We're all human.
Actually,
well, certainly.
I was speaking to Jeff, the editor of NAG magazine, a while ago about this, and he says that they get as much requests to do this sort of thing as people doing YouTube would. So, yeah.
When you say this kind of thing, are you talking about like advertorials and the like?
Not like advertorials. Like, for instance, you'll get pieces of hardware to review or games to review, and once the review goes out,
go easy on it.
The people will come back and say, go easy on us. Maybe you've been a bit too harsh. And in that case, me personally as a reviewer, I would just say, well, you gave me a product to review. I will consider it on the same level as I would consider any other mouse, peripheral, or headset or whatever. And if it doesn't meet the same standards, then that's not my fault. So, yeah.
Well, exactly. That's ultimately. So once again, it comes back to your responsibility to your reader, right? Which is you're there to provide critical assessment of the hardware or the game.
I will say that as an indie reviewer or just tackling early access, it's especially a problem because you have to find a medium between being critical of the game, but not stepping on anyone's toes too much.
Realizing that it's still a work in progress.
A work in progress, or it was a one-man show. So you do kind of feel sorry for them, or you're thinking, let me go easy on the guy because it's just some dude doing it at home or already come back home from college. But you've also got to be honest to your readers.
Yeah, when you say taking it easy on the guy, are you saying in terms of like an indie title that's reviewed, not trying to hold it to the same standards as a AAA title, for example?
Exactly. Okay. You can't do that.
Yeah. No, okay, fair enough. Obviously that's a huge discrepancy, right? If you're reviewing something like Risk of Rain and you're saying, well, there wasn't any 3D and it wasn't running at 1080p 60 frames per second. That's
so
the assets were just so exactly. But but it's a tricky one, right? Because now you also have stuff like, just bringing it back to what like the YouTube topic, you have stuff like early access titles, right? Which is, and I've often seen people saying that you can't, at least developers, often coming up with the point of you can't really review an early access title because it's still in development, right? And for me, YouTube specifically does a really good job here in showing it in its current state, number one. But number two, and I think this is with the gaming press as well, being critical about it because you're still selling a product. If it's early access, you're still asking somebody to, as far as I'm concerned,
it's monetary.
If you're putting a price tag on it, that is a product that is being sold. Whether it's still going to be developed 6 months down the line, or potentially if you just give up on it, there's this Kickstarter situation with Yog Ventures by the sort of tying it all together, this Yogscast, which is obviously a very popular YouTube channel that has this kind of content that we've been talking about. They kickstarted a game called Yog Ventures, which was going to be like an open world multiplayer sandbox type of game.
I think that they've started a new game and they're going to basically give all the backers access to this one instead.
Well, they haven't started. That's the thing. They haven't started the new game. Tug is in a game that was already in development that they say was more in line with what they hope to achieve with Yog Ventures. But that's not, for me at least, that's not really the point, right? As a backer on Kickstarter, you have backed this idea. And there's a lot of guys that backed it at the levels that required sort of physical rewards, which they're now not apparently going to be receiving. And there's no recourse. So in this case,
good, not delivered.
Exactly. So the thing is, though, from a review perspective, if you had received Yog Ventures and the statement was, well, it's still being developed, you can't really assign a skill to it, but the game was terrible. What do you actually do? It would be like the forest. So like there was the forest, right, which came out, versus I think there's that it was a dinosaur. It was a very similar game on Steam, similar to the forest, but it was set like on a dinosaur island or the like.
Hang on.
Are you guys sort of
Stomping Grounds? It's called Stomping Grounds.
Stomping Grounds. Thank you.
Matthew.
So
Matthew,
the two games are very similar. The two games are very similar, but Stomping Grounds is apparently it's not at the level where it can be considered a fully fledged title, but you're having to pay for it. In order to access it, you have to buy it. So for me, that's the game, and I think YouTubers at least do a really good job. I think sometimes from a gaming press perspective, you can review it, but text does not necessarily convey the state that it's in. Whereas from the YouTuber's perspective, it kind of gives you that overall picture. So I definitely think there's a place for it, and I think it's going to become more prominent as stuff goes on.
Game journalism is moving more into like a video type thing, because that's
I definitely think so.
That's what you're ultimately playing. You're playing a video game.
Well, yeah, I mean, it has a lot of. Exactly. I mean, it has a lot of advantages, and I mean, writing will always be there because it definitely, like I've said before in my piece, it definitely has a number of, it's got a number of characteristics that just allow it, that makes it a more suitable sort of method of covering games in a certain way, which is, I mean, obviously like a long-term piece or the likes of micro sort of investigation into these YouTubers. I don't think that would really work as well in a video format. I think it works well from having that sort of considered sort of approach to the topic and then collating all the data and sort of structuring it in a way that's digestible. That's really all I can say about it. But I mean, I'm very keen to see where it. I mean, I'm very keen to see where it's going. But
we're in another revolution.
You've been bursting to say that because we have word limits on the site. So
exactly.
Yeah, you've been bursting to say
100%. We're going through another revolution. We had the printing revolution a few centuries back. Now the internet, now computers have changed the way that we do media again. And we're trying to adapt everything that we do to this new medium.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly it. And I mean, I think also that's exactly it. And like you say, there's some disagreement about YouTube and being a viable medium. And I think that's just... there's some people that say that the gaming press is now picking on the YouTubers because it's threatening their model, right? Exactly. Which is that's exactly it. I think possibly those guys have a valid point because it does sort of eat into that sort of audience, so to speak. But I think that, like anything, it's going to be each is going to find its niche.
We'll have to adapt. That's what it boils down to.
Exactly. Sort of start making podcasts, for example.
Yeah.
That could work.
Yeah, that could work. That's an idea. Anyway.
Well, that'll
cool,
be,
guys.
That'll be that for it.
I think that's it.
There's just the competitive events.
We've run over quite a bit here.
The Dota 2 International is going on at the moment, and Evo. What is Evo again? Is that for LOL?
Evo is Evo is for fight. It's the premier sort of international fighting game event. They cover a number of fighting games like Ultra Street Fighter 4. It's basically that genre of the games. And yeah, it's considered, like I say, the premier event for them. So that happened last week, and there were some fantastic plays. So I definitely urge any of our listeners to go out and if you can find YouTube videos or go and check some of the Twitch channels that sort of covered the event. It's really just really an exciting. And I think like Dota 2. For somebody that's not familiar with the mechanics, watching a competitive event can be a bit daunting. Whereas fighting games, it's very understandable, right? You've got two guys and they're going to beat up on each other. And if you don't appreciate necessarily the complexities of what's going on, you can at least appreciate you at least understand what is happening when you see it on the screen, basically, and you can kind of appreciate the sort of finesse that these guys have. Executing some of these moves, so
and especially with Street Fighter, I mean, watching two skilled players at one another is always quite a feat.
Yeah, or when you watch
definitely,
or when you watch anyone who's really really good at Killing Floor, that is just incredible. The amount of YouTube videos out there just to show people who can do all the combos, and I mean, you got to have fast fingers. You can't be
500 enemies coming at them, and
so I mean, definitely check that out.
Yeah, and if you have ESPN, you can also watch the international on ESPN now, which has never been done before.
Yeah, so the final, which I believe is on the 21st, it's tomorrow, essentially. So that'll be aired on ESPN, like you say. You can also check it out at the Dota 2 website. And they've done a fantastic job so far of covering Dota 2 as well, just in terms of the sort of the main stream and the newbie stream. So you can actually, as a new player, you can just listen into the newbie stream and they actually explain in a lot more detail what's going on. And I think that's been fantastic so far. In some ways, it's actually exceeded the main stream just because the guys have sort of been forced to delve into what they're explaining. What they're covering. The game mechanics as they're going. They've been forced to actually think through what they're saying. And sometimes you've seen them take a double take as to like, oh, well, we've always just said this, but we haven't actually ever thought about what it actually means.
So no elaboration.
Exactly. It's kind of sort of this internalized lingo within that community that you don't necessarily think about. So it's definitely exciting time for any sort of competitive, any listener that's interested in those kind of competitive events, and I think hopefully we're just going to see more of it.
Very cool.
Okay, well.
All right,
then
guys.
That'll be it for the podcast
I think.
Today. What we're going to do from now on is we're going to hopefully have this on Wednesday evenings at 7 p.m. Also live as well. And it's going to be a regular feature from that point on. Every week we'll have more. We'll actually try to have less to talk about because we're now running into an hour and a half now. But we're going to have more different sorts of things to talk about, and possibly even special guests in the future. And
certainly, yeah.
This is the NAG Online Podcast.
I mean, this is something that's evolving, so we definitely would any feedback, guys, that you guys have, please send it our way, whether it's going to be, I assume this is going to be posted on the website.
On the website,
Wesley, so
there will be a direct download for the audio that you can grab, and it'll also be up on YouTube, so you can listen to it from there.
So, I mean, guys, please, any feedback, whether it's negative or positive, send it our way, because we want to improve this and we want it to be relevant to you guys. So, hit us up and let us know.
Cool. Until then,
all right.
I'm Wesley Fick.
Yeah, I'm Rick de Klerk.
I'm Mark Dell.
Okay. Cheers, guys.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.
Cheerio.